CSIS 2440 is filmed before a live studio audience.
So the plan for the day, we have one mission, that's it, one mission, get our databases connected to PHP both on our local machines and on our remote machine. The local machine's pretty easy. The remote machine is a pain in the butt, okay? It's a pain, but we'll get there, all right? So let's just start. Now, I'm not gonna teach you any database code today, right? I'm gonna show you some database code and you're just gonna have to push the I believe button and just believe that it works. And the next two lectures are gonna be all about what the code really means and all that. So we're not gonna worry about that today. So if you have questions about how a query works or something like that, I would hold the question till another day because we're gonna spend at least 2 days on that. Okay, so getting connected. I've already got a little project set up here. So it's an empty index file and I'm just gonna connect it right now to my local machine, okay? So I'm gonna show you a couple things, then I'll pause the video and I'll let you guys type the code or whatever to get kind of caught up, all right? But first, let's just make a few notes here. Okay, so the first thing, I'm just gonna write down the steps first, right? Step one, we're going to make some constants, right? That's something that you haven't done yet in this class. And then we're going to connect to the database. And that is just sort of like our reading and writing files where we open a tunnel. We're gonna open a tunnel from this file to our actual database server, right? And one of those tunnels is gonna be right here on your machine, you know, nano inches away or whatever, right? It's just physically on the same machine. And then the other tunnel is gonna be across the internet to this free hosting awesome site that we use, right? Okay, so step three, we're going to write a database query. And step four, we're going to run the database query. Run database query. And again, a query is just asking the database a question or adding a record to a table or removing a record or something, but it's just, you're basically sending some SQL command or code through our tunnel that we created on line 3 from this file to the database. And then last, we're going to loop through the data. Now, step 5 there, the last one, loop through the data, we're only doing that if we're grabbing data. Right, if I'm deleting data from the database, there's nothing to loop through. We're just saying, hey, delete this stuff out of the database. What's a database? What are tables? I know we haven't gotten there yet, right? But I think you guys have a general idea of what a database is, right? It's just a place to put data. So if I'm adding a record to the database, then the 5th step is not necessary either. But if I'm getting stuff out of the database and then I'm going to display it on my web page, that's where the 5th step comes in. All right, so let's look at what these steps look like. Make some constants. A constant is, they actually in some languages call them variables, even though you can't change them, right? But it is a variable in the sense that it's a placeholder that holds a value, except for you can't change the value ever. Once you assign the value, that's it, the end. So the function that we use for that is called define, right? And then what you do is you give it a name. So I'm going to give this first one the name host, and then the value that you're going to give it. And the value is localhost, all right? And we'll explain all these values in just a minute. Notice that I named it with a capital, all caps, right? You don't have to do that, but that's pretty standard practice in most languages. If you're dealing with constants, they use all caps. Just so later in your code, when you see it, you'll know that's a constant, okay? So we're gonna make a few more here. I'm gonna make one called user, and I can call this whatever I want. I'm just using these terms and you'll see why in just a minute. Password, and we'll go with DB. Okay, my username for my database should be the same as yours on my local machine, which is root, okay? And then the password, if you did yours the way I told you to, about a month and a half ago, your password should be 1550. And last, the database itself is a database that's going to be called palindromes. Okay, we haven't created that yet, but we will. This is just setting up some constants so that later in my code I can use these to pass in as parameters. Okay, so the real work comes here, connecting to the database, and there's a function for that. It's called MySQL I_connect. Now you can connect to multiple databases, different kinds of databases. You can connect to a SQL Server database, you can connect to a Postgres database, and if you're connecting to the SQL Server one, it's actually called MySQL. I, and I don't think the I is there on that one, okay? MySQL. If you're doing Postgres, it's Postgres_connect, right? But we're doing MySQL. Back in the day, that was the function, MySQL. But then they improved the function, and now it's called MySQL improved, right? But this thing takes in 4 parameters. Any guesses what those parameters might be? Yeah, the host name, the username, the password, right? You can see it on the screen there, right? So because I created those constants, I can just put in the word host. But I could, if I wanted to, put localhost, comma, root, comma, 1550, right? Okay. But this, you'll see why we did this a little bit later. Host, user, password, and database, okay? So this is the same thing as putting localhost right there, root there, password there, and database there. Okay, so now we've connected. This actually returns some information, right? It returns whether or not you connected safely and some things like this. And so you need to assign it to a variable so you can do something with it. And we just use con. You can use whatever you want, but I use con most of the time, okay? Then we write a query. So this is the first actual SQL code you're going to see in this class. And again, don't worry if you don't understand it. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it SQL. Again, use whatever variable name you want. And I'm going to say select star from palindromes. Palindrome, I believe, is the name of it, okay? So select star from palindrome. All this means is look in the palindrome table, right? We're in the palindrome database. Look in the palindrome table and give me all of the fields and all of the values. That's what that line means. We'll learn way more about it later. Also note that it ends with a semicolon. And then this, because this is a variable, it's all in quotes. That also ends with a semicolon because that's the end of the PHP code, right? Okay, so let's pause right here for just a minute. Really, all we've done is connected to the database, right? Because I could have put localhost here and whatever, and the username and all that. I didn't have to create those constants. That's not required to connect to a database. That's going to come in handy later. But I've made a tunnel now. There's a port, a conveyor belt, a whatever, a pipe between this file called index and my database server. On line 5, we created that. On line 8, I just made a variable that has a command in it, okay? So what we're going to do, we've just made the connection and we've written a query that's useless because it's nothing more than just simply a variable here. We don't even have a database yet, right? So I'm going to show you how to get that, and we're going to pause the video. I'm going to have you guys install the database right now, all right? So here's where it comes from. If you go to today's lecture notes, connecting to a database, okay? And right here is a file called PalSQL. Click on that, and it's going to open up in a new window. And then don't do anything with it in this window. I want you to download it by clicking the download thing up here at the top of the screen. Now it's going to be downloaded to your desktop or wherever you download your files, and then go ahead and open it up in Notepad or Notepad++ or whatever text editor you're using. Now you'll see that there are 2 commands here. There's the top one, which is for your local machine, and then there's the bottom one for your remote machine, okay? We're going to deal with this first one here. What it's going to do is create the database. That's what line 2 does. And again, we're going to learn these commands later. Line 2 and 3 creates the database, so it drops it if it's already there, and then creates it. And then we're going to switch over to using it. Then we're going to create a table called palindrome. And then we're going to insert these 4 values into it. And then we're going to display the data. Okay, how do we do all of that? Well, if you open up your XAMPP, so mine's down here. So get this window open right here. So if you're on a PC, then your thing should look like mine does on the screen there, and make sure you got green lights on Apache and on MySQL. If you're on a Mac, click on the Manage Servers tab, and that'll bring up something that looks Mac-like version of this. Just make sure both of those are green, and if they're not green, go ahead and start them, and then we're good to go. Now that they're green, for Windows users, and then I'll get to Macs in a second. For Windows users, you're going to click on where the MySQL is, right across here, to the admin button right there. That takes you here to the MySQL interface, which is PHP_MyAdmin. So for Macs, go to the first tab on your XAMPP, which is called Welcome, and then on the bottom right, the very first button there, it's called Go to Application. Click on that, and it will actually take you to a web page that looks like this. Once you're here on Macs, click on PHP-MyAdmin at the top right corner there, and you should land in the same place. Okay, once we're here, this is what's called PHP-MyAdmin. It is a graphical user interface for getting into a database. You can see mine on the left there. I got a bunch of databases that I've built just for fun and playing around. You guys probably don't have any, okay? We're going to add one right now. So if you go to the top here, click on the SQL tab right there, and it opens up a little command window where you can just type in SQL commands. Well, guess what you're going to put there? You're going to put that command I gave you to download a minute ago. This top one, just copy that line 2 through 7 right there. Copy it and paste it right there, but don't run it yet, just paste it there. Okay, so on the screen here, that's the command that I just had you guys download and copy. On the right side of your screen over here on the edge, about in the middle of my screen on the right edge, is the Go button. You're going to click that. It'll run the query, and you may get these errors here where it says note 1008 can't drop database palindromes because it doesn't exist. Well, yeah, it didn't exist. You guys just built that right now, so it doesn't exist. Line 1049, same type of thing. But it should all be installed, and the way to check it and to verify it, on the left-hand side, you'll see this list of databases here, okay? Click on the one that says palindrome on the left-hand side. Everybody see that? Right there. So when you clicked on it, it should have loaded that, and it should have those values in the database. All right, now that we got the database installed, now we can go back to our PHP code and start trying to connect to it, right? So all we've done already, we said that our host is the local host, right? Local host is the name of your website, if you will, that's on your computer right now. The password is root, right? That's just what it is for your local one. Or sorry, the username is root. The password should be 1550. However, here's how you find out if you didn't follow my instructions, right? Here's how you find out. So for PC users, we'll start there, then we'll look at Macs in a second. If you just come over here under config, the config next to Apache right here, this config button, and you go down to PHP-MyAdmin, click on that right there, and if you look inside this text file, it might have opened up in Notepad++ for you, but your password is right here on this line. Now notice mine is not 1550, okay? I put a really complicated password in there, okay? But whatever it is on that line that says password there, that's the password we need to put in our PHP. So I need to change mine from 1550 to that. I used to have it at 1550, and then I was having some issues, and I put a complicated password in there, okay? So that is what goes right there. All right, so that's how you do it on PC. For a Mac, I've got a couple notes here for you. If you go to your applications in your Finder on your Mac, and inside of the applications folder in Finder, go to the Champ folder, and then inside of the Champ folder, you're going to Champ Files, and inside of there, there's another folder. So this is a folder, Champ Files, another folder called PHP-MyAdmin. Inside of PHP-MyAdmin is this file right here called config.inc.php. You want to edit that file, or you don't even have to edit it, just open it up and look at it. And somewhere around line 32, you will see that same thing we saw a second ago on the PC, which says what the password is equal to. For everybody, it should be 1550, but there is a rare case that you changed it. All right, so that's how it works on a Mac. So let's go back to the PHP code now. So again, all we've done is set up some, quote, variables, which are constant that cannot be changed, right here. And we've made a tunnel from this file to our database server, right here. And then we just made a variable here that's just going to run a query. Let me show you what this query does. If you just grab that, copy and paste that, and we go back over to PHP-MyAdmin, and you go into the SQL tab up here at the top, and you just paste that in there, it's just going to display the contents of that table. That's all it does. There they are on the screen right here, okay? But right now on line 12, it's useless. It's just sitting there. It's just words inside of a variable. So we need to run the query. We need to actually go through our tunnel that we created on line 9 and send that query to the database. Right now you saw me manually dump it in there on this screen. Well, here we're going to send it through code. So there's a function for that. MySQL I_query, okay? It takes in two parameters, the connection and the actual query that you're going to write. Now notice here, I could have done this, right? That would be just fine. And I could have done this. That would be just fine. Totally legitimate. And in fact, if you want to get crazy here, let's just do this real quick. Localhost and root and this long crazy password that I can't remember. And database, palindromes, right? If I had that one line, I don't need any of that. That right there will connect to a database and pass that query into the database, and then it will return the results into this variable that I'm going to call results right here, like so. You could totally do that, all in one line. I like having it separate for clean reading code and for a reason that will become apparent a little bit later, okay? So let's back up here. Now so far, we still haven't done a lot, okay? We've connected to this tunnel, we've actually sent a query through the tunnel, and then the database on the other end of the tunnel sent it back to our code here, and now I've captured the results in this variable called results. Call the variable whatever you want, call it Beavis, but that's what I call it. Now I just want to do something with that data, and now we're going to loop through it. So that result is just an array. In fact, let's look at it real quick. Just do a var dump. Here it is, db test. And I got a syntax error on line 9. Of course I do. Oh, God, I got rid of my connection there. That's funny. When I was copying and pasting a minute ago, I got rid of it. So let's put that back real quick. Line 15. Oh, I have it here. Oh, that's why. Could have just copied and pasted that. I just didn't undo far enough back. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, that's where we were a minute ago. Okay, take a look here. And notice it's just an array, okay? This is just information about the results that came back. And now notice here, so this is some information that tells us what the current field is and how many fields there are. Well, how many fields there are? There are 2. See, ID and phrase, right? Okay. It tells us that the number of rows is 4. Well, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. Well, there's a function that knows how to get into that and grab the data, okay? And that function is called fetch array, okay? So get rid of this. So down here in the loop through array portion, we're going to call that function MySQL I fetch array. These are a lot of functions to remember, guys. They're all in the lecture notes for today, okay? And then we pass in 2 things. The results that we just had, that's that thing we just looked at up here. And then we pass in what kind of, this is going to return another array. What kind of array do we want? We want an associative array, okay? You could return it as an indexed array if we wanted. So we want MySQL I underscore ASOC. That is the shorthand for associative array, okay? So what I'm going to do real quick is assign this to a variable, x, just for a minute, so we can take a look at what's in there. So we'll do a var dump. All right, let's take a look at what's in that. Remember, here's what's in the whole results array. When I refresh this, look at this array. It's ID equals 1, phrase equals race car. Well, that is the first record in there. Okay, it's the first record in that result. Okay, so I just want to clarify what's going on here with this results business, right? This result is actually grabbing the records from the database. Right here, we grabbed this information about the database, about the records, about the table that we're trying to look in, which is this query said, hey, grab the stuff from Palindrome. Then we went and ran that query right here. That's what we did in 15. The results are here, okay? Well, now that we have those results, there's some metadata in there that this MySQL fetch array knows what to do with, okay? MySQL fetch array knows if I look at this results thing, which is what I'm seeing right here, it knows what to do. And what we've told it to do is grab those records. And as we saw when we did the var dump here, it displayed the first record there, okay? Well, we want to display all of them, all right? So we're going to loop through this. That's what this line here is all about, right? So let's just get rid of this for a minute, and we're going to do a while loop, right? We're basically going to do while that has something in it. While there's something in it, we want to do something, okay? What do we want to do? We want to display the data, okay? But while there's something in there, let's display it. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to right now just echo out hello and a line break, okay? We know that there are 4 things inside of results, right? So this loop is going to run 4 times. And so right now, all it's going to do is just echo out hello 4 times, right? That's silly, but that's what it's going to do. So I refresh it, and it just echoed out hello 4 times, okay? If I go in here and I add a 5th record, so I'll just insert a record here real quick, and we'll do phrase Taco Cat. That's your favorite one. All right, so we'll just add Taco Cat. And now if I go back and browse it, there's 5 records. So when I refresh this page, there will be 5 hellos, right? The point that I'm trying to make here, and it's a long, lengthy explanation to make this simple point, that this results variable we got here by going into the tunnel, passing the query, the result is information that the MySQL fetch array query can understand, such that it can dig into the table we're trying to dig into and then give us the results back. And so it knows that there are 5 things in there. So it looped through all 5 of them. Well, rather than printing out hello, I want to echo out what's actually in the table. Okay? Well, if you recall, earlier when we looked at it, it had an ideth element, which was this, and it had a phraseth element in the array, right? So if I assign this to a variable right here, row, and I set it equal to this, let's just do a var dump of that. So remember, each record is an array, and this is going to give me the first record, then the second record, and then the third, and so forth as it loops through. So as I refresh this again, now we'll see in the loop, instead of the 5 hellos, it gives me the first record, the second record, third record, and so on down the line, right? But notice what the records are called. This is the ideth element. This is the phraseth element. So if I just simply said that I want you to echo the row phraseth element, tack a little line break there, that will echo out each thing in the palindrome list, like so. Dig it?
Can you dig it?
The question was, I'll see if I can sort of answer it and ask it at the same time, because it's kind of a tricky question. But what's being asked here is, normally, you know, when you're comparing something, you're doing that kind of a trick, right? You're saying, if row equals that, then do whatever. But we're not actually doing that. We are intentionally assigning the row variable to the fetch array function there. So what happens here is this. On the first iteration of the loop, row is equal to the first record in the table. So row equals, as we saw when we did that var dump a second ago, row equals the first record. Then that is true, right? Because again, in PHP, everything's true unless it's 0 or false. So that whole thing does evaluate to true, okay? Then on the second iteration, row is being reassigned to a new value, which is the second row. And then keep going until you get to the final one, right? On the 5th iteration, row is equal to the 5th row in the table, which is the final row in our case. And what will happen is the next time through, the array has been exhausted, right? The MySQL fetch array is now empty, so it returns nothing or returns false. So row is now equal to false, right? So because it's equal to false, the loop stops. Make sense? Tricky. Okay, well, we've accomplished the first half of our goal. We got the database connected, okay? It's working and we're doing good. The problem is this only connects to our local machine. I want this to connect to our remote machine, okay? So first of all, the password and the host and the username and the database name are all different on your server, okay? Now it depends on who your hosting company is and a million other things. But for those who are using freehosting.io, we're gonna walk through how to deal with that. And I hate it, but it's what we gotta do, okay? So what's gonna happen here is this. We're gonna have to do something like this. If, this is pseudocode. We're on, if this is the local machine, then we want these to be our constants. Else, we want this new set here that we have to deal with here, right? And how do we figure out if it's the local machine? We'll get to that in a second, okay? So, first of all, I know that the username for mine is not root. I know that the password is not that. In fact, the password for mine is chicken liver, okay? That's just a dumb one that I use for this class because I don't care if it gets hacked or whatever. The database will not be called palindrome, so we have to fill in this information here, right? We don't know what these are at the moment. And I'm going to show you guys how to find yours on your computers, okay? But the idea is if this is the local machine, then we want the host and user and password to be that. If it's the remote machine, if this file is actually sitting on the remote machine, then we want to use those values. That is why I did this down here and use constants. Because otherwise, if I just hard-coded localhost down here, it wouldn't work if I'm on my remote machine. Dig it?
Can you dig it?
So here we go. Here's how we get the information. You ready? Go ahead and log in to your free hosting account, freehosting.io, and then click up here at the top where it says clients, click log in. So when you log in, you should have something that looks like this. Click on the website button right here. And I held the control key down so it would open up in a new tab. You don't have to do that. Then come over here and you will see your website, right? Mine's stonecoldprofessor.vip, okay? We want to go into the cPanel here. So if you want it to be in a separate tab, which I recommend, hold the control key down and then click cPanel, or you can just right click and go to open in a new tab, okay? So now we got cPanel and you'll see this little spinning thing and finally it opens. If this happens, which once in a while it does on this stupid site, just click on details and go down to visit this unsafe site. It's fine. Click continue. Okay, you're in the cPanel now. Now this part's not hard. What we're about to do, if we just come down here to where it says MySQL databases right there, about in the middle of the page, click on that. And then right here, you'll see it says new database. Give it the name palindromes with an S and click create database. And poof, you've created a database, okay? Now that you're here, we see most of the information we need right now, right? My database name is right here, so grab that, and then you're going to copy and paste that for the database name right here, line 16. That's the database name. And then over here is the username right there. So that goes up here under user instead of root. I already knew my password, but I'll tell you how to get your password in a minute. Then the host. Now this is tricky. It's easy because the information is right there on your face on the screen, but most computers, the name is still localhost because the file is sitting on the machine, right? It's going to be sitting on the remote server. So it's remote to you here in this classroom, but it's local to the file when you upload to the server. However, this free hosting one, it's not localhost, it is this right here. So put that here for host. And now my code will connect. That code is all correct. But there's no database for it to connect to just yet. We're going to actually make the database in just a minute. But before we do though, let me tell you how to get your password. So the password right there on line 15. For most of you, if you didn't change any settings, whatever password you used to log into the site, it'll be that password. It's the same. For me, I changed it. Now, if you try to use the password that you logged in with the site in your database and it does not work, I'll show you how to fix that, okay? Here's how you do it. You'll need to go back to your profile page here. You'll click on website. Now look at this carefully, please.
Lion, hear me!
Right now, I'm on my profile page. If I click edit this right here, this will allow me to change my login password to log into this site. I do not want to do that. Leave that one alone. Click on websites. When you click on the websites tab, it comes here. Here, you want to click on the Manage button. When you click on Manage, this one right here, change this password. This password will be the one that ends up being your database password. So I put chicken liver right here for mine, but put whatever you want, right? And after this video, I'm going to change it to something else so anybody who watches the video can't get in, right? But right now, that's what I have it set to. So if you don't know what the password is, or if the one that you logged into the site doesn't work, come here like we just walked through, change this, and then that will be the password that you want to use for your database. Okay, that aside though, we need to actually get into the database. So, how do we do that? Okay, if we go back to our website page, I'm going to click that website tab. So once you click on the website page, then you click on cPanel again. We've already done that once. We're going to click on it again. And when we get in here, we're going to go here to PHP MyAdmin. And you may get this little thing that's telling you to connect right here. You may not, but if you do, just click connect. Otherwise, it might just take you directly there. Now notice here, we are in PHP MyAdmin again, but this is actually on your remote server, okay? Click on the SQL tab at the top, and then we're going to go back to this code here that we downloaded, and we're going to copy this bottom one. Paste that into the window, but don't hit the go button. Okay, when you click the go button, I don't know if this is unique to this server or if it's just my computer, but every time I've done this, when I click the go button, it just sits there and doesn't seem to do anything. I don't get any kind of a spinning wheel or anything that tells me it's doing anything, but it is actually working. So click the go button here and see, just sit there for a minute, right? Don't do anything, just sit there for a minute to make sure it runs. So it just takes forever to do it, but now you can see it's working, right? Everything's there, the files are there and everything. Okay, so the next thing then, if we've done this code correctly, we still haven't figured out how to figure out if it's on the local machine or not, right? We'll look at that in a second. But other than that, if we fix line 4, when we run it locally, it'll use those. When we run it remotely, it'll use those. Now, why do I need to even do that? Why can't I just pick one or the other?
Good question. You should ask him that when we get there.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. I develop it locally, connect it to my local database, and it works, and I test it, and everything's great. And then I upload it to my server, and it doesn't work because I used my local credentials. So this is the whole point of this is because we're developers and we're building locally, then we serve it remotely, or we upload it, and then we have to run it. Okay, how do we figure out if we're on the local machine or not? Well, you'll recall we have some super globals, right? So let's just, right here, I'm going to comment out everything on this page for just, in fact, I'll just delete it for a second. What we're looking for is something that tells us localhost, and I actually see something right there on the screen. Right there, okay? It is the HTTP_hosteth element of the server superglobal. So if I just echo right here, at the top here, echo server HTTP host, that will echo out the word localhost at the top of the page, because that is what I'm on, localhost. If I were to do that on my remote server, it would echo out the URL. Okay, now, let me give you a little bit more piece of clarity here with this weird localhost business. A moment ago, I mentioned to you that most database servers on remote, this value right here will also be localhost. If you're using HostGator or something else, that value will be localhost. Even in that case, when it's localhost, that's not the HTTP host. The HTTP host is your URL. It's the name of the site you're on. So it'll be Stone Cold Professor or whatever, right? And so that's why this line of code on line 4 works if I just check that server variable to see if it spits out localhost or if it spits anything else out, like the URL I'm on, Stone Cold Professor, then it'll run down here, okay? So let's put all this back. if that guy is equal to localhost. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue echoing that out at the top just for a moment so that we can see what that looks like on the remote. All right, the way this is going right now, let's just refresh it on the local. And well, we don't need that var dump right there. Let's get rid of that. So right now it's saying localhost, which is where we're at, and then it's giving me the stuff in the database. Put a couple more line breaks there. All right, let's upload it, see if it worked. Ready? So I'm just going to use the file manager because I don't think I've connected this up to my smart FTP. So to get to the file manager, if you don't have it connected to your FTP, just control panel again, which is already open here. Online file manager. And I have a folder already. Oh man, chicken liver and the initial directory htdocs. You shouldn't have to do that. All right, into DB test here. I'm going to upload right here the index file. And we're getting this stupid error. This happened to me earlier today and I don't know why. Well, for some reason I can't get to upload, but that's okay because I have already on here a file that's a DB test, and if I edit it on the server itself, I'm going to actually copy this code right here into that file. This is the same thing as me uploading it, right? Save it. Hopefully it'll save. Okay, it's saved. So now I'm going to go there and test it live. Here we go. Stone Cold Professor dot free whatever slash DB test, that URL right there. Sure enough, it worked. Okay. Notice here it's displaying that for the HTTP host, right? It's the host itself. It's not the full path. It's just the actual server, the actual URL, the actual website address, right? And it's displayed all the items inside the database. And if I display that same code locally, we see that we get this. Notice the databases are not the same, right? This one has Taco Cat. This one does not. We didn't add it. So quick little recap here. The whole point of today was to just get us connected to our database servers, right? And so the truth is, this one line right here, if you do it correctly, in fact, this line right here, the query, is really a combination of all that stuff right there, right? So just look at line 5 for a minute. All we're doing is we're running this command that's called query, right? It's MySQL query because that's the language we're using, but it could have been MSSQL, whatever. And we're querying it and we're connecting, we're making a tunnel, and then we're passing off this query. Well, those are just variables that we assigned up above here. There's our connection, there's our query, right? How did we connect? Well, we used either these credentials or these credentials. We determined that based on where the file was physically located. That's line 3. Once we get down here and we've made the connection, we've passed the query, we get the results here. This fetch array is a magic function that PHP has. It magically knows that when I pass in the return value of this function, if I pass it in right here, it knows, okay, I want all of the records one at a time from the database. And then through each iteration of the loop, this value row gets reassigned each record in that loop. And then we do whatever we want with it right here. In this case, we just echoed out the information. Okay, but we could have done whatever with this. We could have dumped it into another variable and then used it somewhere else in our code. We can do whatever we want with it because it's just data. Okay, questions about any of that?